one of the greatest receivers in NFL history. A man who tormented defensive coordinators and cut down primetime cornerbacks. A 13-year career marked by achievement, discipline, and mystery. However, touchdowns and his shy persona stood a man shrouded in darkness.
All right, Nuno, who really knows this guy?
Not many people. You could just see a different side of Marvin, a side he opened up, he revealed a little bit about his personality, his private side.
And there you see the exchange between Harrison and Felipe Sparks.
One of the most prolific receivers in NFL history. But the Philadelphia Police Department has a file on Harrison that shows a side of him football fans are not aware of.
Meantime, police in Philadelphia say that 6 of the bullet casings found after an April 29th shooting across from Marvin Harrison's car wash came from Harrison's gun.
He had 2 guns in his hand at the time I'm talking to him. He raised the guns up and started shooting. So why would I make myself a target?
5 months after this interview, he entered a rented Toyota Camry.
An individual walked up 6 foot tall and fired multiple shots, and then he fled the scene on foot.
As Dixon was being wheeled into surgery, a lieutenant stated to Dixon, "You may not live. Who shot you?" He replied, "You know what it is. It is the same thing from last time. Marvin Harrison."
Harrison's final game in the NFL would take place in San Diego. In his 13th season, his stats had begun to decline, and his knees had become brittle. The end of his illustrious career was in sight. A man had just been beaten by 2 men. Enraged, the man sprung up from the pavement and entered his vehicle, going reverse down 25th Street and Thompson, stopping in front of a garage, prohibiting one of the men who had beaten him from leaving. The man trying to leave exited the vehicle and stood on the sidewalk. He raised both of his arms, and in each hand, he had a 9mm pistol aimed squarely at the beaten man, and he began to fire off rounds, riddling the car with bullets as the beaten man ducked for cover and drove off. The man ran after the vehicle, continuing to fire off round after round, striking the beaten man in the hand, also striking another passerby in the back and injuring a 2-year-old boy. After interviewing witnesses and the beaten man, one name had repeatedly come up: Marvin Harrison.
With the 19th first choice in the first round, the Indianapolis Colts select Marvin Harrison, wide receiver from Syracuse.
And I've been harping on Marvin Harrison all day, and like Andre Rison a few years ago, this is the steal of the first round.
In his rookie year, Harrison would showcase all the trademarks that made him a force in Syracuse, totaling 836 yards in his rookie year and snagging 8 touchdowns. In the Colts' next season, they would become the NFL's laughingstock, ending the season with a 3-13 record. However, a young quarterback from Tennessee would arrive and change everything.
With the first pick of the draft, the Indianapolis Colts select quarterback, University of Tennessee, Peyton Manning.
In Manning, a connection that would prove to be one of the most productive in NFL history. In Manning's first career touchdown pass, Harrison would once again be at the end of a Manning touchdown. However, in Manning's first season with the team, the Colts would once again struggle to find their footing.
With the fourth choice in this draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Edgerrin James, running back, University of Miami.
The trifecta of Manning, Harrison, and rookie Edgerrin James made the Colts the premier team in the NFL. After 3 seasons of minor success, Harrison had a breakout season, recording 1,663 yards receiving and 12. Harrison would lead the league in receiving yards and would be named to his first Pro Bowl. For the next 7 seasons, Harrison would become the most prolific receiver of the 2000s, earning Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors in each of those 7 seasons. In 2000, Harrison ended the season with 1,413 yards receiving, 14 touchdowns, and 102 receptions. In 2001, Harrison continued to improve, garnering 1,524 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns, and 109 receptions. And in 2002, Harrison would have the greatest season of his career, garnering 1,722 yards receiving, 11 touchdowns, on an NFL record 143 catches.
Here's the ball in his hand. 1, 2. Right back in front of him.
And in 2003, the Colts would make one of their greatest playoff runs, with Harrison and Manning at the helm, reaching the conference championships.
Stadium is alive and kicking for today's AFC championship between Indianapolis and New England.
Harrison had over 1,200 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns in the regular season.
Here in the second quarter, Manning to Harrison. Watch this grab. Oh, wow! Touchdown!
In the Colts' first 2 playoff games, Harrison would take over. In the wild card matchup against the Denver Broncos, Harrison had over 130 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns, defeating the Broncos in a stunning 41-10 blowout. In the Colts' divisional matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, Harrison would once again become an integral part of the Colts' success. The game was hard-fought. However, the Colts' high-powered offense proved too much for the Chiefs to handle, winning the game 38-31. Facing one of the best defenses in the league, Harrison and the Colts offense would struggle. All-Pro Ty Law would lock down Harrison, ending the game with just 19 yards receiving on 3 catches and 1 fumble. The Colts season was over. To the media, Harrison was an enigma. He avoided interviews and the media at all costs. In an era of the NFL diva, where touchdown celebrations and the me attitude reigned supreme, Harrison was the exact opposite. Quiet, soft-spoken, humble, stayed calm, and jogged over to the sidelines, never uttering a word.
Congratulations to the quiet man of the Colts.
Among teammates, Harrison was equally enigmatic. Often described by teammates as quiet and reclusive, however, there was a side to Marvin that many were unaware of.
AFC Eastern Division champion New York Jets take on Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts.
Hours before the 2002 wildcard game, Harrison was catching passes for Manning. At the same time, Jet ball boys retrieved balls for Jets punter Matt Turk. One of the ball boys, Matt Pryor, threw a ball downfield that landed too close to Harrison, and the soft-spoken Harrison charged the ball boy, bumping him in the chest. "You threw the ball at me?" Harrison screamed. "You're a professional. You should do your job better than that." Everyone on the field froze. Pryor asked Harrison to back away. Instead, Harrison grabbed Pryor by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Players and stadium workers tried to separate the two, as fans around the stadium chanted for the ball boy to fight back. The ball boy was taken to the medical station, where they found marks around his neck. "This was a violent incident," says Den Santos, security manager at the Meadowlands that day. "Coaches tried to downplay it, but we were just one step away from making an arrest."
Harrison has been entangled in a series of shootings in a crime-ridden Philadelphia neighborhood.
A group of teenagers ran after a boy from a rival gang. Traversing through the ruins of the dilapidated city, the boy could no longer outrun them and was caught. One of the teenagers, Marvin Greer, took out a blade and stabbed the boy in the back, killing him. Greer would be charged with second-degree murder and would die at the young age of 22 from natural causes. Before his death, he fathered 3 children, each with different mothers. Marquand Gordon, a notorious armed robber, and a man who Kitty Carparella, a Philadelphia crime reporter, described as one of the Philadelphia mob's top 2 associates in the African American underworld, and is currently serving 140 years in prison. On September 3rd, 1991, a 17-year-old boy was subbed out of a championship basketball game. Enraged, he got on his bike and raced home, but unexpectedly returned. With a submachine gun, riddling the player that subbed in for him with bullets. Killing the player that took his place. Marvin Woods is serving life imprisonment. Greer's third and final son would have a slightly different path. While Harrison was able to escape from that life on West Thompson Street that had claimed so many lives, he was unable to break free from its disturbing spell. 3 nights before the 2005 Pro Bowl, Harrison and a friend were walking in front of a few stores in Honolulu, Hawaii, when a group of teenagers approached, asking Harrison for an autograph. Harrison, on the phone, declined, but the group of teens kept asking, and Harrison lost it, swinging at one of the teenagers, then grabbing him by the throat and putting an arm around his neck. After a few minutes of fighting, Harrison and the man ran off, leaving one teenager beaten. A witness to the incident stated, "I was walking about 3 feet behind these kids," the witness told the magazine. Harrison and his friends acted like real punks.
Marvin Harrison from Peyton Manning, touchdown.
For much of the 2000s, the Colts offense would lead the NFL, and the Manning-Harrison connection would be its focal point. Between 1999 and 2006, Harrison would have 8 consecutive seasons of at least 1,100 yards receiving, accompanied by double-digit touchdown receptions in each of those seasons. However, even with Harrison's elite productivity and the 2-time MVP and future Hall of Famer Peyton Manning at the helm, the Colts would fail to reach a Super Bowl. That would be the case until the 2006 season. In the regular season, the Colts experienced repeated success during the Manning era, and it would prove no different in 2006. For the first time in NFL history, an NFL franchise would start back-to-back seasons with a 9-0 record. The Colts would end the season with a 12-4 record, sending them to the postseason. The Colts would have little trouble in their wildcard game against the Chiefs. The Colts defense delivered the best postseason performance in their franchise's history, holding the Kansas City offense to just 126 total yards, winning the game 23-8. Facing the Ravens' vaunted hard-hitting defense, would try their hardest to stop the Harrison and Manning aerial attack. And would do a great job of containing it. But they failed to account for their kicker. A man who decided Super Bowls with the swing of his foot. Vinatieri would score all the Colts' points, going 5 for 5, winning the game 15-6. The gatekeepers to the Super Bowl would be none other than the New England Patriots, one of the NFL's finest rivalries. A rivalry that the Patriots seemed to have a firm handle on. In 2 consecutive playoff appearances, the Patriots had outmatched, and that trend would seemingly continue. But the Colts fought back. In the game, Manning led the team downfield. The Colts looked primed for victory. The entire season rested on this drive, and with the Colts in striking distance, and with one of the greatest passing attacks in football, it was natural to think that it would be through the air that they would reach the Super Bowl. But someone spoke up. The reserved Marvin Harrison suggested they run the ball instead. Manning agreed. The Colts' running game wore down the New England front, and in a Jeff Saturday-led goal line charge, the Colts scored 6. However, it would be the Colts' defense that would seal the victory. They were headed to the Super Bowl.
Colts are going to the Super Bowl. Marlon Jackson.
Since the first time Harrison laced up his cleats, he dreamed of this moment. To be on the NFL's grandest stage and hold the coveted Lombardi Trophy overhead. But for Harrison and the Colts, their Super Bowl reality would not start as they would have hoped. Rain poured onto the field. The first half was a game marked by big plays and turnovers. The Colts leading 16-14 at the half. And much like the rest of the postseason had gone, it wouldn't be the Colts' offense that would lead them to victory. The Colts would defeat the Chicago Bears. This would mark the high point of Harrison's career in the NFL. But within a year, Harrison's career would effectively end. Harrison injured his knee on September 30th, 2007, as a charging linebacker rammed into him, an injury that would require orthoscopic knee surgery. But showing all the trademarks that made him great, his rabid work ethic and toughness, Harrison would jog back onto the field and would catch a pass the very next play. The injury, however, would cause Harrison to miss the majority of the 2007 season and would lead to his eventual retirement after the 2008 season.
Marvin Harrison fired the shots.
Meantime, police in Philadelphia say that 6 of the bullet casings found after an April 29th shooting across from Marvin Harrison's car wash came from Harrison's gun. Harrison's representatives say the Colts wide receiver was not present during the shooting and that his gun was not involved.
Marvin Harrison is a Super Bowl champion, one of the most prolific receivers in NFL history, an unparalleled route runner with Hall of Fame credentials.
I'm pretty comfortable that I know who fired the gun.
He is a person of interest. Mr. Harrison was in a fight no more than 5 minutes before the shooting.
Dwight, were you really concerned that Marvin Harrison would come after your family? Harrison has been entangled in a series of shootings in a crime-ridden Philadelphia neighborhood that has baffled more than a dozen detectives, the FBI, and 2 district attorneys. But the Philadelphia Police Department has a file on Harrison that shows a side of him football fans are not aware of.
This shit's already in the clouds, so take it. Come on, let's not get money for this. This is how you get paid. You want some money, right? But don't matter. Don't matter.
Fled the scene on foot.
Fired into its passenger window before fleeing. Frightened pedestrians run from the gunfire. As Dixon was being wheeled into surgery, a lieutenant stated to Dixon, "You may not live. Who shot you?" He replied, "You know what it is. It is the same thing from last time. Marvin Harrison."
The police had received a tip of Harrison's potential involvement in the shooting and found shell casings that matched weapons Harrison had registered. When the police arrived, Harrison appeared calm, and when asked if he had a weapon on him, he nodded and pulled up his pant leg, revealing a .32 caliber revolver in an ankle holster. But this was not the weapon the police were after. Harrison's stepfather stated, "Detective, I know what you've come for. It's right over here." Lying behind a trash can was the weapon police so desperately had searched for. A Fabrique Nationale 5.7 pistol. Harrison was brought in for questioning. Here is how Harrison described what happened that day. "I walked down and asked him why he was continually threatening me and coming to my businesses and harassing my employees. He said, 'I'm a grown man. I can do and go wherever I want and say what I want. And like I said, I will you up and your bar up. Now what?' He put his hands up and swung at me. He grazed me on my left shoulder and chin. I swung back and missed. We wrestled and threw punches a little bit. I then walked up the street back to my garage. I guess like 5 minutes later, he backs up the street in front of my car wash, gets on the phone and is saying, 'Get your guns. You know where you're gonna get, Stan. I'm gonna you up, Marv. You ain't no gangster.' I told him that I wasn't a gangster, but that he couldn't keep coming back to my place of business and threaten me and start trouble. He drove off down the street. I was inside the garage. I heard gunshots like right after that." Harrison admitted to police that he had gotten into a physical altercation with Dwight Dixon 5 to 10 minutes before the shooting. He stated that he heard gunshots while sitting in the doorway of his garage, placing him at the scene of the crime with motive. Harrison states that the weapon was nowhere near the area where the shooting took place. In fact, it had only been used when it was purchased. But as ballistic tests would prove, 5 of the 6 casings at the scene matched Harrison's exact 5.7, meaning that it could not have come from any other 5.7, only the 5.7 Harrison had provided to police. However, onlookers were present and would soon come forward. According to Robert Nixon, a man confirmed by police to have been present at the time of the shooting, he saw Harrison and Stanley McCrae, one of Harrison's employees, beating Dwight Dixon, stomping on his stomach and face until Dixon was fading in and out of consciousness. He then saw Dixon stagger back to his car and reverse all the way to Chucky's garage, blocking Harrison from getting into his car and driving away. Harrison, angered, got out of his car, and Dixon and Harrison began to exchange words. Harrison then briefly re-entered his car and returned. Harrison held a pistol in each hand and aimed it at Nixon. Nixon yelled, "You up?" Nixon heard the man scream at Harrison, "You ain't gonna shoot, you ain't gonna shoot, do what you gotta do," and shots began to ring out. Harrison emptied both clips into Dixon's vehicle, and Dixon sped off. Nixon ran for cover as Harrison ran into the street, continuing to fire off round after round. Nixon did not know at the time, but he was struck in the back. Police found hospital records shortly after the shooting that Nixon did in fact seek medical treatment for the wound. Dixon claimed that this incident was a result of a long-running feud with Harrison that had finally boiled over. A feud had started after Harrison had banned Dixon from coming to his bar, Playmakers, and the two exchanged words. Dixon was one of the few men to have challenged Harrison. Harrison was held in high regard in the neighborhood and was not used to anyone talking him in the way Dixon had. Dixon had gotten into a fight with one of Harrison's employees, and Dixon then claimed is when Harrison and another employee hit him in the back. After the fight was broken up, an enraged Dixon got into his car and backed up right in front of Harrison as he stood in front of his garage with a pistol in each hand. The two began to exchange words, and before Dixon could drive away, Harrison began shooting at Dixon, and Dixon drove off as Harrison chased after the car, continuing to fire. When asked on the segment E60 by ESPN if anyone else could have been the one that fired at him and not Harrison, he responded,
Is there any chance that somebody else could have fired those shots?
No. Marvin Harrison fired the shots.
There's no doubt in your mind.
I've seen him. I've seen him. Marvin fired the shot.
Manning deep, Harrison, touchdown! Oh, what a throw! There was the pump and go.
Being a witness in Philadelphia was a dangerous game. In December, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that 13 witnesses, or relatives of witnesses, have been murdered in the city since 2001. This fear caused Dwight Dixon to lie about what had happened and how he got shot. And out of fear, Robert Nixon almost never came forward. An associate of Harrison had contacted Nixon, offering to pay to remove the bullet, and that he would be compensated if he stayed away from the police. However, things took a dark turn. Nixon received a message asking him to meet at the woods across the Philadelphia Zoo at 2 a.m. Nixon was now panicked, and soon after news broke of the shooting and Harrison's possible involvement, his voicemail began to fill with death threats. He had no other choice but to talk to the police. After several interviews, the police believed he was being truthful. A cop had remembered patting him down at the crime scene, placing him there, and records indicated that he went to a hospital for treatment after being shot in the back. And his testimony matched well with all the other witness statements. The police believed him so much that they placed him under protective custody. They all had different pieces of the same story, the detective says. And here's a case where you don't need to believe anybody. You have a gun, you have casings, you have ballistic tests, you have Harrison's own words, you have probable cause for an arrest warrant. However, prosecutors saw the case differently. They saw a bunch of unreliable witnesses. Dixon, a drug dealer, and Nixon, a low-level hustler. People who would not be trusted by the jury. Men who had changed their statements multiple times. Many policemen believed if Harrison were a plumber or UPS driver, he would already have been placed under arrest and charged. And on January 6, 2009, District Attorney Lynn Abraham called a press conference, announcing that the case would not be going forward. The case would not be going forward, Abraham said, due to multiple, mutually exclusive, inherently untrustworthy, and sometimes false statements by the people present. Just 3 weeks would pass.
We arguing, before I could pull off, he raised the guns up and started shooting.
3 weeks later, Dixon was prosecuted for giving false statements to the police. Dixon would then sue Harrison in civil court for damages. Dixon stated that he was scared to go back because of what might happen to him.
Do you still hang around the neighborhood?
No, not as much as I used to since this happened, because I'd be a target for something to happen to me, something further to happen to me.
You're afraid?
Yes.
Dixon's mother had overheard him talking on the phone, stating, "I'm gonna let it go. Let my lawyer take care of it." But to be shot and prosecuted, especially while Harrison walked the city a free man, and the street was abuzz about how Pop had been punked. They were laughing at him, he told a friend. "He's not gonna run me out of my neighborhood." On July 21st, 2009, Dixon ate breakfast at a diner just 1 block away from Harrison's bar. After finishing, he walked and got into his car. And what happens next has to be seen to be believed. An unknown man approaches Dixon's car and fires several rounds. He then walks around the back of the car and fires several more rounds at Dixon through the passenger side window. Spectators flee at the sound of gunshots. Dixon was rushed to the hospital. Dixon's condition was dire, and detectives began to ask questions to find out who the perpetrator was. One document stated that Dixon alleged that Harrison paid the gunman to shoot him. However, in a separate investigative report, as Dixon was going to enter surgery, a lieutenant told Dixon, "You may not live. Who shot you?" Dixon replied, "You know what it is. It is the same thing from last time. Marvin Harrison."
No bump at the line of scrimmage, safety helpless, and a great job holding on to the football.
Police received tips that Harrison's cousin, Lonnie Harrison, was involved in the shooting. However, police were unable to find any evidence to support this claim. Police pored over all available surveillance footage, trying to ID the assailant, but could not get a clear view of the man. But soon, a second tape would emerge. The surveillance footage would come from none other than Playmakers, Harrison's bar. This tape, according to police, showed a man crossing in front of the bar on 28th Street, just below Girard. Detectives felt certain that it was the same man they had seen on the convenience store tape, the shooter, walking toward the scene of the crime. But just as the man got close enough to the camera to bring his face into focus, the tape went blank and skipped the next 3 minutes. "There are no coincidences," says one police source. "For the previous hour, that camera picked up every movement, and then it happens to go blank for just that moment?" Police approached Harrison's vehicle, just 3 blocks away from his garage, for driving down the wrong way on a one-way street. As the policeman approached, he saw Harrison place what appeared to be a weapon in the seat console. Harrison provided his car registration and gun permit to the officer. But when asked if he had a weapon in the vehicle, Harrison said no. They asked Harrison to exit the vehicle, and during their search, they found a weapon. Harrison was brought in for questioning and released later that day. As a matter of routine, The weapon will be tested to see if it matches the casings that Dixon believed came from Harrison's second gun that was found in Dixon's truck. But no further information has been released. Harrison drove in his F-350 through the neighborhood. When Harrison saw a man emerge from an apartment and sprint towards him, Harrison was confused and asked the man what he wanted. The man replied, "These guys just broke into my house. Please, I need help." Hesitant, but seeing the man's need, he allowed him to get in the bed of his pickup truck. Harrison quickly dialed 911. And just as he was about to drive off, two masked men came out of the apartment and began to run after Harrison and shot at his vehicle, and Harrison sped off. One of the bullets striking Harrison's tire. The incident soon hit the headlines. But rather than being a positive one, of a former NFL receiver rescuing a man from armed intruders, he was attacked. The incident spurred negative reaction due to Harrison's connection to an April 2008 shooting outside Playmakers.
I just want to tell you one thing. I'm not going to break the record to have the shortest speech in Hall of Fame history. So that's not going to happen.
Harrison's sinister reputation off the gridiron was still difficult for many to believe. How could someone so quiet and humble be capable of such things?
This is already in the clouds, so take it. Of course, I get money for this. This is how you get paid. You want some money, right? What? Don't matter. Don't matter. Hey, what you still talking about, man? Did I tell you to go ahead, man? Oh, did I tell you to go ahead? Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Fuck you up.
In the video, we see Marvin Harrison wielding a bat, charging one of his tenants who was late on his rent. This was a shocking video for many to see, as it made its rounds on news sites and social media. For the first time, we saw the dark side of Marvin Harrison in action. In 2010, District Attorney Seth Williams stated that the investigation into both shootings is still open and are actively investigating all aspects of the murder. Police obtained a search warrant for Lonnie Harrison's apartment, but found nothing. But were told by a confidential informant that Lonnie was indeed the shooter and had attempted to purchase a gun for $500 shortly before the shooting. Police enlisted the help of the FBI to solve the murder. Harrison has never been questioned about the killing of Dwight Dixon. When DA Seth Williams was asked if Harrison was a suspect in the shooting, Williams responded,
"Is he a suspect in the shooting?"
He is a person of interest in this investigation, of course, and has remained such. We could prosecute Mr. Harrison for lying to the police officers and giving false statements if we had enough information. I know that something's been considered by prosecutors here in my office, and it's something that we will consider in the future.
Do you believe that Dwight Dixon's murder was in any way connected to the shooting on April of 2008?
Well, I think a layperson would jump to the conclusion that it's likely, but again, it's an open investigation.
Harrison was sued in civil court by Dwight Dixon and Robert Nixon for the incident. Nixon's attorney said the suit will seek well over $100,000 for physical and psychological damage that was caused on April 29, 2008, when Nixon said he was wounded in the back by a bullet fired from Harrison's gun in North Philadelphia. Both cases were settled on March 4, 2011. for an undisclosed amount. Playmaker, Hall of Famer, murderer? What do you believe?